all of us like spent a month and a half straight just hammering this car out and built it. And then we took it out to Bonneville and got a record with it.
Getting out of the turns like crazy, torquey, but then the seat heater, that was the nicest time around the track.
If there's some component out there that has a lot of engineering behind it, use that part, because it's a waste of time to not, use use something else and then spend all your time trying to figure out why it won't work.
Hello and welcome to The Next Great Car Era, a podcast by EVTUNERS. I'm your host, Daniel Martin, and today I'm sitting down with John Garcia of J5 Design and Fab. Johnny has been in the car scene for a long time and is an all-around builder, designer, and fabricator. He's worked on off-road race cars, was part of the Electroliner team who broke electric land speed records, and has EV swapped around 10 cars, working for EV West and for his personal collection. Among the topics in our conversation, we chat about his path building cars, take a deep dive into a Toyota Hilux, which he Tesla swapped using a BMW i3 battery pack, and discuss what's on the horizon for him. Before we dive in, please remember to like and subscribe on YouTube, leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Instagram. It helps a ton, and I really appreciate it. And now with that, enjoy.
So let's dive right in.
Yeah.
Johnny, thanks for joining me today. Before we dive in too deep, maybe a quick intro and background for folks who have never heard of you before.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess I'm Johnny. Johnny 5 is my nickname that I was given about 20 years ago. Just all-around car builder, designer, engineer, machinist, welder, all the above. Anything that has to do with building a car, that's what I do. Car or bike or airplane or whatever. So kind of whatever I have to do.
How did you get into cars in the first place? Or I guess fabrication, all of the above. You're like a jack of all trades.
Yeah. I started in automotive right out of high school. Actually, I'd say before that, because my dad had a transmission remanufacturing company in the 90s. And I started learning about cars then with him. And I learned how to machine at that point too, because he had a bunch of lathes and mills and all sorts of things. So I'd say that's where it started. And he was also a welder, so that's where I learned that too, just by using the machine sitting there. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then went out of high school. I went right to my first job was actually building Subaru engines over at Crawford Performance. So just high performance turbo Subaru engines. And then I went over to RPM Muffler, which he did a lot of custom header stuff for race cars and a lot of off-road cars. And basically just started learning how to TIG better and doing a lot of stainless headers and stuff like that on different cars. So, and then, from there I did construction for a little bit, and then did actually worked in the shipyard over at BAE Systems, over in the land and armaments department. So that was a pretty interesting couple of years. And then was on my own for a little bit, and then over to EV West. So that's where I started building electric cars.
Which is what we're here to talk about.
Yeah.
Among other things. But then there's some news as well. The most recent, you've moved from EV West now, correct?
Yep. Yeah. So I'm on my own, working on my business, J5 Design and Fabrication, and just going to build that up That's mainly e-bike stuff. I'll probably venture into different things later on, but as of right now, it's just doing electric bike parts, and maybe I'll make a e-bike or something. I don't know. We'll see. See how busy I
Cool.
get with it.
Yeah, I bet you're going to be pretty busy. There's a lot of cool things being done.
Oh yeah.
So last time we talked, you mentioned that there was also a bunch of interest in airplanes. I'd love to hear about that before we get too down the EV rabbit hole. It's fascinating, all of the different facets and things that you do. I don't know how you find the hours in the day.
I don't know. I'm always just interested in so many different things, that anything mechanical really, and electronics, and I don't know. I find everything fascinating. So kind of just naturally like to learn about it. But yeah, as far as I guess my background or family background in aviation goes back to my grandpa that worked for Skunk Works and for Lockheed. And
cool.
He basically developed the camera for the U-2 spy plane and for the SR-71. So we have a lot of family history with all that stuff. And then he worked for various different companies like Hughes Aircraft, and for McDonnell Douglas. So he's just all sorts of aviation background.
My grandma dropped one time that she had worked for Hughes way back in the day, and I didn't find that out till I was old enough to appreciate that, and I thought that was a really cool fact. What, Grandma? Are you serious? She just nods, like, "Oh yeah, it was fine. Good job. Had a lot of fun. It's a little crazy."
That's cool.
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, a lot of people did work in the aviation industry at those times. That's I hear that a lot with a lot of people's grandparents ended up being in something to do with aviation, either Boeing or Lockheed or McDonnell Douglas or any of those.
It was really booming in that era.
Oh yeah, big time.
I wonder if in the future there'll be something different. You know, when we, all of our generation, have grandkids, it'll be like, oh yeah, we did something with EVs. I
think it's going to be the EV thing, the big EV push.
So there's a lot of moving parts to it, and it's exciting. I've talked to a lot of folks, and myself included, where it is like the new challenge, the new interesting thing. Beyond anything else, it's just, like you were saying, fascinating. And that's something that can build momentum for sure.
Oh yeah. And I definitely say, like, there's just a lot to do right now to get the powertrain of all these vehicles to be electric. And so I think the cars are pretty figured out at this point. We just have to keep implementing it into more vehicles. And I think the next biggest thing is going to be aviation, because that's a tough problem to solve because of the weight factor of batteries.
Yeah.
So it's really actually dependent on that. But there's obviously things that can be done meantime to make aircraft more efficient to be able to adopt this.
I think I've seen a couple small electric airplanes that are more like gliders, just really like single or two people, but nothing commercial.
Yeah, gliders are definitely the most efficient thing, next to lifting body aircraft. But gliders really, it's a long skinny wing is the most efficient thing to have.
Yeah.
And so they fly far, and they fly really fast if you want them to.
Oh, that's
and really
cool.
high.
I didn't realize that. Well, perhaps there's going to be some sort of synergy, right? Because as the cars are leading battery development, and more batteries as they get made, they're going to get better, more efficient, lighter.
Right.
Potential new materials that aren't marketable right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was some stuff going around the internet recently about sodium batteries that a Chinese car company is making, and they're supposedly good enough for a car at this point. We'll see.
Yeah.
Sometimes that I can never tell if it's clickbait or not.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a ton of that. But I know people are working on different chemistries and different ways to put these batteries together. So there's definitely hope. There's definitely some batteries coming out that I'm sure are gonna solve a lot of issues.
Doubtless. So EVs at large, when did those first blip on your radar? You were racing, you were building performance engines. At some point along the line, I imagine you said, well, what the heck? There's no cylinders in that car.
That definitely started with RC cars around the early 2000s.
Okay.
When I saw the first brushless car, RC car, come out, and I was watching a friend run a nitro car, and he kept, it kept rolling and dying and kept having to restart it, and he's just fighting this thing. I'm like, that sucks. And then another friend brought over a brushless car, RC car, and I was just watching him zip around and going faster than the nitro car, and I'm like, well, why aren't we doing this? Like, this seems to work on the small scale. Why don't we put this in a car that we can get in and go rip around? So that's definitely where it started. And then I remember when Tesla started, and I first heard about them around 2007, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I kept telling friends, I'm like, it'd be cool if there was like a actual good looking car that was electric, because that's definitely what it's going to take is a car that's got, that looks really good. That's going to attract people to want to get it. And then I saw that Tesla had that Roadster. I'm like, oh, this is it. They're going to do it. Like, super confident seeing that. Like, this is going to be the thing. And it just kind of snowballed from there. But I've always liked gas engines, because that's what I grew up on, doing turbo 4 cylinders and just V8 cars, and I've built tons and tons of engines. And then it got to the point where I was like tired of doing it. I was tired of building headers, tired of building engines and blowing them up and fixing them. And I was like, okay, this really sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I'd rather focus on the car than fix this damn engine all the time. So that's where I really started going like, okay, how can I get my cars to have electric motors now? So.
And at this point, you've built quite a few electric cars, right?
Yep. Yeah, I did.
Roughly how many?
Let's see. Just 1, 2, 3. About 10, something like that.
Some for clients and some for yourself?
Yeah, mostly at EV West. Those are all client ones, and then my 2 Hilux and my Volkswagen Bug, and then some future cars too. So.
Yeah, I got some in the pipes that you're thinking about.
Yeah, I have. My dad actually wants to do. He has a Nash Metropolitan that he wants to do electric. So
cool.
That'll probably be something we throw together. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you also worked on one of the really fast cars, kind of specifically for speed records,
Yeah.
right? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So that was Electroliner, and when I got to EV West about a month and a half in, Michael and a buddy his wanted to do a land speed car, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm a chassis builder, let's build a car. So I ended up building the chassis for it at the shop, and then all of us like spent a month and a half straight just hammering this car out and built it. And then we took it out to Bonneville and got a record with it.
That's awesome.
And that was at 229. So it's not like super fast, but it's for an EV at that point, that was pretty quick. So
yeah,
it's pretty
faster
cool.
than most people are ever going to drive.
Oh yeah, and that kind of escalated into other cars being built. So it's pretty cool. My buddy Eddie did a land speed car last year. I think it was last year or a year before. Yeah, I think so. But he did a record of 3:58. So
wow,
world's fastest TV now. So it's kind of cool.
That's gone a long ways from the first record.
Yeah. Yeah. It's getting faster and faster. So, and right now I'm helping a buddy build another car to hopefully go faster. So we'll see.
Total arms race for speed.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a lot of fun. Just see how quick we make these cars go, you know?
So when you go out to do something like that, is there like a testing process, or you ease it in? I imagine that you don't just go out and run a record the first lap, first time you power it on. You maybe have to kind of try it, iterate a little bit. Oh, something broke. Oh, it's not optimized here. Is that kind of along the right lines?
More or less. Our car accidentally went over 200 the very first time it ran, but that was a mistake. But yeah, for the most part, you should be shaking down a car and not trying to go too fast at first. And that's mostly just to make sure the chassis, capable of doing it and making sure it drives straight and doesn't fall apart or anything.
Right.
Less worried about the actual power plant itself than anything else. And then obviously once you start trying to go for speed, then you pay attention to the power plant and seeing how the batteries can hold up to that.
What does the power plant look like in these land speed cars?
Just Tesla motor, just the old Model S performance motor. And
okay,
that's what it's been in all these cars so far, because they're old and cheap to get a hold of, and they make an awful lot of power. So
they're mounted probably longitudinally.
An Electroliner, it was mounted. It was just in the back, like a standard Tesla.
Oh, really?
Okay. And then
so both the axles are going into the Tesla motor like usual, using that gearing and everything.
It's different gearing on Electroliner. It was It was a 4.5 to 1 ratio on that, and then on, I don't know what Eddie was running on his, but his is longitudinal, and he's running 2 motors on his.
Okay.
So, yeah, just different setups. And then like Electroliner was a open wheel. What do you call it? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. It's just a open wheel car versus what the other car was a streamliner. So Lakester. That's what it's called, Lakester.
Oh, okay.
So it's a different style land speed car.
Cool. That's a new term for me.
Mm-hmm.
File it away.
Yeah. So, and it's kind of interesting because because the EVs and land speed are new, the rules are changing around now and things are moving around because there's so many EVs coming into the game now. So it's interesting to see the whole land speed thing morph as it, becomes electric, or more people run electric stuff.
Yeah.
So they have different classes and things like that they're putting together now.
I imagine there's some sort of balance between battery pack size and weight, because you don't really need to go that far, but you do need a certain size to be able to get the current to dump that much juice.
Yep.
Did you have to figure that out?
Oh yeah, we're always figuring it out. It's a tough equation because you're not. I mean, you're concerned about weight, obviously, but you're more concerned about getting a very, very high power battery into a really small spot, and by that I mean it's just high power density. So basically, can it dump a lot of current over a long period of time? And that's kind of the game that we're trying to, work with. Mm-hmm. And so, just finding a battery that can deliver that much current over that time and not get too hot or anything either, which all sorts of factors going on.
Were you guys using Tesla cells or no?
Nope. Actually, hybrid batteries do the best because
that's what I've heard.
Mm-hmm, they can deliver a lot of current in a short amount of time, and they don't get hot doing it.
Huh.
So it's technically, it is safer because it's not turning that current into heat inside the battery, which is could get really dangerous. So
yeah, especially at triple digit speeds.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, fire at those speeds is not good.
Well, there's plenty of oxygen to keep it burning. That's
yeah.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
What are your thoughts? Have you tuned in or heard of or seen any of the Formula E racing? It's like a F1 spinoff, and seems like it's not nearly as popular as F1, but every year they're putting out kind of new rules and tweaking and new cars and all of that. Have you ever watched any of that?
Actually not too much. It is interesting though. I never been into the Formula racing a whole lot, but seems like it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that it will continue to get cool. I think at one point they had they were trying some sort of audience engagement thing where like people voted, and then that gave like boosts to the battery or to the power and I was not interested in that because that's too gimmicky. I wanted to just see the engineering and the racecraft, but I think they since got rid of it. So it'll be interesting to see if it picks up more, or just more EV classes and other types of racing too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna pan out with racing. A lot of people that are into racing like the sound of the engines and that sort of thing. And honestly, it's hard to imagine racing without sounds of an engine. So I don't know how that'll work out.
But I took my Tesla to the track a couple weeks ago, and it was kicking pants. It was super fun.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it again. I'm starting at the very beginning, learning to racecraft and all of that. But it was great and good experience. There was a couple other Teslas there. It was HPDE, so all mixed types of cars. It had everything from fast and loud to small and Miatas, agile, and then a couple Teslas.
That's cool. Yeah, I think it'll be a different thing. I think EVs are definitely going to have an advantage because of their torque. So
yeah,
when it comes to racing, that's a pretty important thing.
Yeah, that's true. They may not have the engine sound, but they do have a lot of torque. And from a performance perspective, they're fast. So if that's
from
what
a
someone
performance
cares about.
Yeah, from a performance perspective, it's better in a lot of ways. It's just because it's so consistent. What you go in with is what you come out with. It's the motors, act the same. The weight's the same. You don't have fuel sloshing around. The temperature of the day doesn't affect how your engine's performing. None of that. So it's actually more of a. I would say EVs would present more of a driver's class type racing, to where your cars are so similar and they act so. It's like video game like how they act. So you end up, seeing who's actually just a better driver. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd agree with it. When talking about tuning of EVs, a lot of times before you even say, especially OEMs like Teslas or whatnot, before you even think about what can you do to crack into the powertrain to overclock things, you're looking at suspension and aerodynamics. How do you keep the car planted and be able to maneuver accurately?
Yep.
But there's a lot there too.
Oh yeah, there's most of the cars there. So I mean, if I were to race a Tesla and be really serious about it, I'd definitely really look at the suspension, get the car really set up, put it up on a table, and get the geometry perfect. And I'd also take as much weight as I possibly could out of that car. So it'd be pretty stripped by the time I'd be done with it if I ever did something like that.
You mean I got to ditch my seat heaters?
Pretty much.
No. Well, since I'm not trying to be competitive yet, I still have them. And you do the track learning in the HPDE one with an instructor. Happened to be a buddy of mine, but he'd never been in a Tesla. And so he's real fast and drives a Mustang as his. He's currently rebuilding it right now. But I left the seat heater on and didn't tell him in the passenger seat. He gets out and he's like, "Man, that was so relaxing. It was quiet. We were like, getting out of the turns like crazy, torquey. But then the seat heater, that was the nicest time around the track."
That's funny. Yep. It's quite a bit different.
Yeah. Keep people guessing.
Yep.
So I'd love to hear more about some of the builds that you've done, like the Bug or the Hilux. I think the first one that I had seen you post about was the Hilux, and I thought that was just the neatest build.
Yeah, that's been an interesting build, because I've had that truck since 2007, I think. And I got it from an auction, and it was basically just gonna go get crushed, which sucked. But I went and got it. Or my friend Robert told me about it, and we went over and picked it up, and I drug it home. Literally. Yeah. So I've had that truck for a long time. I've put different engines in it, lots of turbo setups, a V8 at one point, and never really was satisfied with what I was doing. I was just more or less just tinkering on it and couldn't really make a final decision like this is going to be how this truck is. And then once I started working at EV West, I was able to get some parts, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do my Hilux. And at the time, it had a turbo 22R in it that I was just fighting and trying to get it to run right. And I just finally said, screw this, I'm over this, and just I said I'm just gonna do it with the Tesla motor and be done. It's gonna make way more power than it ever could with that turbo setup, and just go that route. And so I'd pull the motor out one day and committed to it, and then just started building it. And it was funny because it was lowered for the longest time, like slammed to the ground. It was going to be like a street truck.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then because I used a BMW i3 battery pack, like the whole thing, and I put it in the frame rails, I was like, gosh, this would be cool just to use this whole battery pack and be done. And then I started fitting it and fitting the motor, and I realized the motor was pretty damn close to the ground. I was like, well, I don't want to change how this is going to be set up, because I could have put the battery under the hood and brought the motor up and kept it lowered. But then I thought, this thing would look actually really cool if it was lifted with some like 31 inch motors on it, and just do that whole route. So I just went that way instead and lifted it, got the motor way up high, and I was like, this works.
Yeah.
And then as I was building it, I was looking up Hiluxes that, I just Google lifted Hilux, and found out that there was actually a whole line of Toyota Hiluxes that were converted to a 4x4, and ended up finding some of those, and they're called Wolverines. And I started looking at those. I'm like, that looks really cool. So I just kind of followed how they built those trucks, and just kind of mimicked one of those Wolverine trucks. And then that was the outcome. So it ended up looking pretty cool.
Yeah. What are you using to control it?
Using a T2C. So from EV Controls. It's just it's basically a CAN bus spoofer that just controls the motor. So super basic setup. And and it's actually, that truck is my daily. I don't have any other car anymore. I had a BMW i3 for a while, and I sold it. So I was like, I don't need another car. I'll just drive this thing. And it's
awesome.
Heck of a lot cheaper to have. So,
yes. Less maintenance too than probably when you had the 22R.
Yeah. A lot less. So yeah, it's been awesome. It's quick. It's free to drive because I charge it off my solar. So my solar, and I have a whole off-grid system in my shop that powers everything. So
it's a dream.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the i3 battery, love how you put it in the rails there. I haven't come across anyone who's used that particular battery pack yet. So could you tell us a little bit about how it was to use? Easy? Is that a potential candidate for other swaps? What's the BMS look like?
They're really good batteries. It delivers 650 amps. It's rated at 400, but that's what I see it coming out of it. But as far as like a simple 400 volt battery pack that can run a Tesla motor, they're awesome. They're not very big, and they don't weigh very much. I think that's a 450-pound battery pack.
Oh wow!
And it's
yeah, that is light.
It's just super nice because I didn't have to do much to build a battery. It was already done, and they're cheap, so all sorts of benefits.
Yeah, win-win. How many kilowatt hours is in the pack?
33.
Okay, that probably gets you what, like 100 miles range, somewhere in that neighborhood.
70 to 80.
70 to 80.
Yeah, and a lot of that is obviously because its aerodynamics are horrible, and the 31-inch mutters doesn't help that thing at all.
No, not so much.
Most of it's because it's trying to rotate that big tire. But once I figured out that it was really inefficient, I'm like, you know what, screw it. This truck's awesome. I can actually use it for a truck.
Yeah.
So it's just, I just kind of, said, screw it. This is fine. I'll add more battery if I really feel like it, but.
Sure. Are you, as a daily, are you kind of only using between 20, don't let it drop below 20 and don't charge it to 100%, kind of the window, or are you not overthinking it?
No, I keep it within there.
Okay.
Actually, my habit is to actually just keep it between 60 and 80%. And when it drops below 60, my whole driving style changes drastically, because within 60 to 80, I can just punch it everywhere and have fun with it, and I'm not hurting the pack. But once I get below 60, I don't. I stop driving, quick, and stop trying to race people. So, because the voltage sag is what I really pay attention to, and that's what really starts to hurt the battery, is when you start getting lower and lower in voltage and you're demanding that current. That's when you create a lot of heat and a lot of dendrites in the battery and start really ruining it. So,
and are you able to see that? Do you have some logging or screen capability to be able to actually monitor that while you're driving?
Yeah, on the T2C, it actually has a iPad app, which is really, really awesome. And it shows you everything you need. And you can see the stator temp, the motor temp, the everything.
Oh, cool.
Inverter. And you can see current going through the bus bar on the motor. You can see voltage.
Wow.
All sorts of stuff. You could see everything going on. And so, and it also data logs if you want it to. So I don't drive based on a percentage. I actually drive just looking at my voltage.
Okay.
So for me, it's a lot easier because I'll hop on an e-bike and it's a 13S battery. So I know that 54.6 is full. I know that I should stop flooring it everywhere around 47 volts or 48 volts. And then on my truck, it's like, if it's around 390, 393, somewhere around there, it's pretty full. If I get down to like 370, I stop driving as quickly. So, and that's all based on per cell voltage.
That's really cool. I'd never heard of kind of monitoring it like that.
Yeah, it's the way that I learned, because I was riding e-bikes so early on that I've learned how to just read voltage and understand how a lithium battery works. So I kind of compare them to how it works is I kind of compare it to a Chevy gas gauge from like the 90s, where the gauge, like, it kind of just does this. And then, it goes from full to like 3/4 really quick. And then it's like just stays there between, 3/4 and 1/4, and then it just drops. That's more or less how lithiums act. So it's
that first bit you have fun, and then it's just be consistent to protect the battery and get it charged.
Yep. So
love that.
uh, yeah, it ends up working out. And for me, I like to see voltage over anything else. Seeing that and just knowing where the cell is sitting is like a peace of mind to me versus a percentage where I'm like, I don't know where that battery is sitting. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. What about are you using like stock cooling, or is the i3 battery, is it liquid cooled, or how does that work?
So the i3 battery is it's cooled by AC.
Okay. Yep.
So it has rails underneath the battery uh, modules themselves that have Freon going through it, and it chills the battery. I don't use that.
Oh, you
It's
don't?
just no.
Okay.
It's just dry right now, and a lot of that is for cooling it during DC fast charge.
Uh-huh.
Actually, most of it's for that. And I mean, if it's a screaming hot day and you're flooring your car all over the place, then yeah, it's gonna probably kick the AC on because it's so damn hot.
Mm-hmm.
But it is mostly for DC fast charge so that you don't bring your temps up while you're, cramming current into the
Dumping
battery.
juice in there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't actually have cooling hooked up to the battery, but
Mm-hmm.
you monitor everything, so
Mm-hmm.
you can know if there's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and I can see the cell temperatures, so it's I just pay attention to that.
Is there a separate BMS that you're using for charging, or were you able to use the OEM somehow?
I didn't end up using the OEM, and you totally can use it. It's a good BMS to use. But I didn't because I just wanted to see more precise monitoring. And just I have sensors in different spots just to see how the cells are doing. So, and then I have a little more control with the BMS itself and how it's acting. So,
which one are you using?
The dilithium.
Okay, that's another new one I haven't come across yet.
Yeah, they're in the EV world, or like the custom EV world, they're pretty common now. They're a good BMS. They do pretty good. So I
feel like I've come across Orion a lot.
Yeah, they're the other one, and they're a little older than the dilithium, and I don't have personal experience with those, but I know that they're also pretty damn good. So
yeah,
it seems like their form is a little bit more professional because the dilithium is just in this like plastic box, but it's okay.
Yeah,
it's inside the battery pack itself, so I'm not too worried about that.
No, it's more about getting it to work right at this point.
Mm-hmm. No, just reliability. That's all I look for.
Yeah. How about the bug build? Was that before or after the Hilux?
That actually started right about the same time.
Okay.
And I actually
I think I'm going to do two swaps at once. Why not?
Yeah, that was a dumb idea. But but I started doing the Hilux and the Bug at the same time, and I actually I was invited to go to the Fully Charged show last year, and I was like, okay, what car do I want to finish and bring? And I'm like, I think it's gonna be the Hilux. Like, I definitely want to drive that. So I finished that and got it in the show. And then now it's just finishing up the Bug. So that's coming along pretty good. And it kind of sucks because that one, if I were just to convert a Bug, it'd take me probably 2 or 3 weeks. But the fact that this thing, it's a Bug, and I had to rebuild like every single part of that thing because it's all rusted. That's taking up all the time.
Yeah. But an opportunity to upgrade while you're at it a little bit, right? Maybe,
oh yeah,
better brakes and Oh, that good
Oh yeah,
stuff.
it has disc brakes now all around, and a better transmission, new pans on it, new everything. It's all new.
Are you
So,
having to do a bunch of metal work for like body panels and rusted out stuff?
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I swear this thing sat on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Like it is it is so rusty. And now
Oh, that's
digging into it, I'm like,
hilarious.
gosh, I don't think I would have started this car had I known it's so bad.
Right. Yeah. This is a little bit different than like the Tesla swap, right? Because you're actually hooking into the 5-speed or 4-speed, whatever.
Yeah, it's an older way to convert cars is just put an electric motor on the transmission. So it's definitely like an older style EV conversion. But they work, and the bug it won't be like near what the Hilux is for speed, but it'll go pretty quick.
You still get the experience of rowing gears if that's what you're missing.
Oh yeah, it's a definitely will be a different experience. So more mechanical.
Yeah.
Oh, and I'm sure I'll blow up a couple trannies because they're not very strong on a Volkswagen. So
What are they built? The original Volkswagen, they had less than 100 horsepower, I think, right?
30 to 60,
Yeah.
somewhere around there,
So the
depending on what
EVs are
engine.
a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. And it's mostly the torque that grenades everything. Oh, it is the torque that grenades everything. So
Yeah, no doubt. Instant.
hmm
So, in general, what are your thoughts about kind of the process of tuning and working with software and doing these conversions? Once you get it all wired up, then there's still the process of getting it talking together and getting it performing how you want. I think in some ways I view that as a similar process to other, like ICE engine builds where you still need to tune them. But we
hmm
have this kind of paradigm where the configuration and setup is a little bit different, even though we're kind of the goal is the same.
Yeah. When when I personally do EVs, I just go for as simple as I possibly can. And from building cars in the past, I've always gone for OEM parts for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of people always want to go for like the cool name brand thing, like, oh, I have a King shocks or a House steering rack, or like a name drop type thing. Whereas I'm like, go toward the factory stuff,
Huh.
because they have a lot of money and engineering on these parts. And if they have the confidence to put some of these parts into production and have a few million of these things out there, then they're probably pretty good.
Mm,
And depending
a
on
good
what,
way to think of it.
yeah, yeah, and depending on what loads they see, or what duty cycles they need to hit, or whatever it is, um, yeah, they definitely put some engineering behind it to make sure that those components can do that.
Mm,
So when I did the Hilux, just made sure I was using a Tesla charger, a stock one, a
okay.
stock Tesla DC, the stock Tesla motor, stock i3 battery for the most part. Um, and I try to stay with components that actually come from cars. Um, because again, if they engineered it to be in these cars forever, then they're probably pretty good.
Yeah.
And they're waterproof, and they're just robust. So that's that's kind of what I try to do. And as far as um, tuning, it's a little easier because you're not really doing some custom weird thing. It's just like, yeah, for a Tesla DC to turn on, you just put 12 volts to the enable wire and it turns on. That's it. And for the charger, you have to do a little more. You have to put in a custom little board to control it, but it's still a very basic setup to where it's just an enable wire and 12 volts and it turns on. And so, yeah. Because the more you get into the aftermarket stuff, as far as chargers and DC-DCs and motor controls and all that stuff, it can get really difficult. And these parts are coming from companies that aren't sometimes, most of the time, you've never heard of. And
sure. Yeah.
And they don't have the experience or engineering background to really make something super robust. They're just making like a few hundred of whatever component they're selling, not a few thousand, like something you would find.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of goes along with what you were saying. You're controlling the motor with kind of a spoofed CAN signal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a very different approach than, say, someone who's like using some of the open source boards that are kind of fundamentally bypassing what was used in the factory. Is that accurate?
Yeah, because you can't. And actually, in the Hilux, I was going to use an open inverter board, but I was having so much trouble trying to get it to work that I said, you know what? Obviously, the TTC's working pretty good. He's got it figured out, as far as CAN spoofing it to where it works perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just go that route and leave the stock Tesla logic alone. Because they spend a ton of money and time engineering the logic in those motors, so they don't blow up the inverter or the motor.
Right.
and that's really important. So,
if you want to keep driving.
yeah. So I'd rather just leave that all alone.
Kind of reminds me of back in my 4-cylinder turbo days, where you would like trick the mass airflow sensor to force it to dump more fuel in.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Especially on a 22R.
Yeah.
They have like a flap door type mass airflow sensor that you just go and tweak the little resistor pot inside to get it to dump more fuel.
Just shove a paper clip in there.
Yeah, which it ends up being bad at a point. But yeah,
works in the moment though.
It does, and if it helps you beat somebody in a race, then it's worth it.
That's right. What sort of configurability do you have though? With that spoofing, do you dial in? Can you still dial in things with that Tesla motor? Like change the way the power is delivered, I guess is the question. If you were to say want to dial it in for off-roading, you might want to have it be a little bit more set up for that as opposed to just a daily drive.
No. That's all the motor logic itself. The way it ramps up power, the way it deramps power, all the exponential setup on the throttle, the slew rates, all of that is all something that you can't mess with. And honestly, I wouldn't. After seeing what
it's good, right?
Yeah, it's really good. And these motors, they're definitely capable of like just twisting an axle right off the get-go. If you gave one of those motors full current right off the bat, it'll just shear everything. Which what good does that do you when it's like, okay, my motor's powerful enough to do this, but now I don't have an axle and and that's expensive and I'm calling AAA. So
yes, and you lost the race.
And you definitely lost the race.
For sure.
So I'd rather just leave that alone because they at Tesla, they definitely gave that motor as much as they could without breaking everything. So I'm sure they have a pile of axles somewhere or something, to that extent of
Probably.
of all the testing they did, just breaking things. That's
guaranteed.
that's how that's how you do it. Just
Yeah.
how far can we take this before it shears us?
Yeah, not something you want to do on the daily driver.
Mm-mm. So, yeah, they definitely have as much as they can get out of them without hurting stuff. So,
And I like the simplicity approach. I used to be more interested in building, but for me personally, at this point, I'm most excited about driving, and so I want more seat time in whatever car that I have. So the idea of something that is, solid and is dependable, it's pretty attractive.
Yeah, and it's interesting because for me, when I started driving the Hilux, I was like, it is a weird thing to drive a car that's been sitting in your yard for 10 plus years, just baking in the sun. And to be in it and driving it down the freeway, it's surreal. It's like, wow, this is cool. Like I'm in this car that's been in my yard forever, and it's, now it's my daily. So it's definitely neat to get a car to the driving point, and that's, like you said, it's that's what it's about for me now. Just making a car drive, and all those little details, whatever. Not too worried about. I'm not too worried about all the little creature comforts or whatever.
Yeah,
I'd rather just go down the road. It's like not even my heater. My heater doesn't even have different speeds. It's just on or off. So hot or cold. But I have it. Yeah,
it counts. Yeah.
So that's
yeah. What's next for you in all of this stuff? You're focusing on your business. You said that there was maybe another car in the mix. You're finishing the bug.
Without getting into too much detail, I'm definitely going toward the aviation direction. So, and planning to start a business doing that. So, that's the big goal.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And right now my whole business, online business right now is just for e-bike stuff, and that's kind of where that's just going to stay. It's basically my job right now until I establish this new thing.
So people can follow your Instagram and kind of be excited to see as you slowly release some of that. I think I maybe saw something on there that was teasing some aviation, or at least gesturing towards it.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny because I'm like trying to figure out what do I call this thing, and I'm working on that, figuring out some different names for what I'm doing. So
sweet.
Yeah, definitely should be cool.
Well, I'll have all the links and everything in the show notes so people can follow you and follow along as that progresses. And I'm sure that as other projects drop as well, you'll be posting those too.
Yep.
And it's always cool to see.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So
what about any advice as we wrap up here for folks who are interested in EVs or building EVs or just electrification in general? Words of wisdom from someone like yourself who has been doing this a long time.
I would say, don't try to get too complicated with it. Just try to do your car build or whatever build as simply as possible. That's always worked for me. With any car that I've ever built, just keep it basic. If there's some component out there that has a lot of engineering behind it, you use that part, because it's a waste of time to not, use use something else and then spend all your time trying to figure out why it won't work. So I would definitely say that. Just keep it simple.
That's good advice.
Oh, yeah.
Right on, Johnny. Well, thank you so much. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.